Okay, so our last video hit its time limit, so we're going to do a second video to finish out the worksheet. So since we had, on our last problem, we had 6x equals 18, our next step is to get the x by itself, so we have to divide both sides by 6. So 18 divided by 6 is going to give you 3, so your answer is going to be x equals 3 for that problem. Okay, moving on to number 11 and number 12. So on number 11, our first step is to distribute. So we're going to get negative 5 plus 5n minus 35 equals negative 40 plus 5n. We then have like terms on our left side, negative 35 and negative 5, so we're going to combine those to get 5n minus 40 equals negative 40 plus 5n. Next step, move our variable, so we're going to move that over to the left side. That actually cancels because 5n minus 5n is 0, so you get negative 40 equals negative 40. So then you have to think about, okay, then you have to move your constant. So we're going to do the opposite of negative 40, which is plus 40. Add 40. So we get 0 equals 0. And if you remember, this means many solutions. So most of them have been one solution, but we've had one no solution and one many solutions. Moving on to number 12. First step, distribute. Remember, this negative means it's a negative 1. So it becomes negative x minus 7 equals negative 6x plus 8. My next step is to move my variable over. So I do the opposite of negative 6x is positive 6x. So negative x and positive 6x, since they're different signs, you subtract them. So you have 6 minus 1, which will give you a positive 5x because you keep the sign on the bigger number. Minus 7 equals 8. You then add 7 to both sides. You end up with 5x equals 15. And then your last step is to divide both sides by 5. And you get x equals 3. Okay, the next problem, you are just justifying your steps. So on this, your first step is to do the distributive property. So you'll get 6y plus 12 minus 4 equals negative 10. And this is the distributive property. Okay, next up, we see that there are like terms on our left side. So we are going to combine them to get, I don't know what happened there. To get 6y plus 8 equals negative 10. So this is combine. Like terms. Okay, our next step is we gotta get that variable by itself. So we are going to subtract the 8. Since we are doing that to both sides, remember, it's not just the subtraction property, it's the subtraction property of inequality. So subtraction, remember that we can put POE for property of equality. And then our last step is to divide by 6. And we get y equals negative 3. So that last step was our division property of equality. Okay, moving on to the next one, I want you to justify your steps again. First thing you're going to do is you're going to distribute. So You get negative 12r plus 24 equals negative 36. This is your distributive property. Your next step is to get that variable by itself. So you want to subtract 24. You get negative 12r equals negative 60. Because you have a negative 36 and a negative 24, since they're the same sign, you're going to add them and keep that sign. So this is your subtraction property of equality. Last step to get that r by itself is we're going to divide by 12, or negative 12. Remember, there's a negative, so you got to make sure you divide by that negative 12. So you're going to get r equals 5. That last step was our division property of equality. Okay, so that is it. All I have for equations. Now I want to go over our polynomials and the terms for them. So, polynomial is the number of terms you have. So if there is one term, it's a monomial. If it's two terms, it's a binomial. If it's three terms, it's a trinomial. And if it's four or more, so I'm going to put that by a plus sign, it's a polynomial. Next, doing our degrees of polynomials. So if there's no exponent, or no variable, there's no variable if there's just a number. This is constant. If your biggest power is the first power, so that means there's just a variable by itself, it's linear. If your biggest power is the second power, so your biggest power on a variable is to the second power, it's quadratic. If it's the biggest power is the third power, it is cubic. And lastly, if its biggest power is fourth power, it is quartic. And that is as far as I'm going to go. Okay, since you are now finished with this worksheet, I next want you to do the next activity in your Google Classroom. And please let me know if you have any questions, or you can ask somebody next to you.